What's up, YouTube? Welcome to the Wright State University Veteran Voices Project. I am Navy veteran and content manager Jeremy Tkach. On behalf of the Veteran Voices Project, we'd like to thank you for watching this interview and to let you know that the best way to support us, and especially the veterans featured on this channel, is to hit that subscribe button. So go ahead, feel free to smash that subscribe button. Please hit that like button and go ahead and comment and share. Again, thank you for watching this important story. Hope you enjoy.
We are recording the interview of Nathan Gunter. This interview is being conducted by David Morse from Wright State University's Veteran Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at Wright State University's new media incubator in Dayton, Ohio. It is 2:05 p.m. on the 29th of June, 2017. All right, Nate. Let's start off with when and where you were born.
I was born in St. Mary's, Ohio, August 19th, 1991.
All right. Who are your parents?
Sherry, it's now Sherry Smith, and Dave Gunter.
Okay. And what were their occupations?
My mom, growing up, was a seamstress and worked at a bank. My dad is a mechanical engineer. He worked for Huffy Bicycles and went on to work for Scott's Fertilizer and Elmer's Glue. So he's been all over.
Okay. All right. Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, so we have a blended family. I have a sister that we have the same parents, and then I have two half-brothers, a half-sister, step-brother, a step-sister. I think I got them all.
Okay.
Yeah.
To your knowledge, did any of them join the military?
No, nobody. I'm the first before my grandpa, and that's the only one in my family that was also in the military.
Okay. What did your grandpa?
He was in Korea, actually. He was in the Air Force. He joined with a buddy of his, promised to stay together. Join together, stay together. His buddy went to North Carolina and he went to France. So he was in France and then went to Landstuhl Air Force Base in Germany in the late 50s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's very cool. Did you get very much interaction with your grandpa?
Oh yeah, we were very close. He passed 3 years ago. He was what we call now kind of in the Navy, we call it like an administrator. He took roll every day. He did a lot of paperwork. He never was one to talk about the military. He wasn't one to stand up when they asked for veterans. He was very humble about it, but just mostly funny stories from France.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So what were you doing before you decided to join the military?
Before I joined back in 2010, I graduated high school, and then I went to the Lake Campus, which is Wright State's branch campus in Salina, which is where I'm from. I stayed living at home. I worked at Menards in the cabinets and appliance department. So I did that. I was living in my mom's attic, going to school full time for, at the time, criminal justice. I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do with my life. None at all. But yeah, I was just sitting around and I was like, I gotta get out of here, I gotta do something. And then I saw, next year's school bills, and I was like, those do not look, they don't look fun to pay. So I decided to do something about it, work, pay for myself. I didn't want to ask for money, so that's where I ended up.
Okay. Now, you said you you joined the Navy.
Yes.
When was it that you decided to join the Navy?
It was after my second semester at Lake Campus. I just felt like I wasn't going anywhere. I was like, well, I'm getting credits, but I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I've always had a fascination with the military. I used to collect little toy airplanes and ships, and, I'm typical boy playing military, shooting guns and stuff like that. I loved it. And I remember I was online just looking at pictures of all the branches, and I saw the Navy ships, and I was like, this looks pretty cool. So I didn't tell my mom. I went up and I talked to a recruiter, and the next week they came over to our actual house, so I had to break it to her then. And yeah, I was really excited. I just thought it was a really cool branch to join. I wanted to travel too. So if I can get school benefits, travel at the same time, do 2 in 1, so I did that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you join the Navy, and then you go to basic training, right, at this point?
Right.
What was basic training like?
Basic training for the Navy is at RTC Great Lakes, which is about an hour north of Chicago in Illinois. It's right on the water there. I had the advantage of going in the winter, so I got there in late September, and then it went until November. But up there by the lake, it's very cold. So I'd heard horrible things. When I got there, the first couple of days are terrifying at boot camp. It's something you'll never forget. I think any military member can tell you that. I don't think you sleep for 2 days maybe. I remember I didn't know. I looked at a clock on the wall. I didn't know if it was 2:30 in the morning or in the middle of the night, because there's no windows, nothing. Just hungry, dehydrated. It's hard. But then after a while, you start to get into a routine of it, and pretty much we lived in very close quarters. They try to get you used to ship life for the Navy. So there was about 80 guys in my room. Days were very routine. I think we woke up about 4:30. You had to be shaved. You always had to have your head shaved, ready to go, in PT clothes, ready to work out. We did that for about an hour. From what I remember, a lot of time we spent in a classroom, which surprised me. I didn't expect that. You'd see pictures of boot camp. You think it's just all in the mud, crawling, jumping over walls and stuff. But no, it was for the Navy, a lot of learning. We actually had tests. We had to sit down and take written tests, and a lot of knowledge you had to learn. Food was great. Best food I had in the whole military was the Navy. We had civilians cooking, so I think that had a big part of that. Towards the end of boot camp, you really get to know everybody. You're making friends and stuff, and then we get to do what we call battle stations in the Navy. So that's a 24-hour, similar to what people call it Hell Week, but a little toned down a little. But there's a actual ship at the base there, and you go on it, and it's on the land, obviously. And you do a simulation for 24 hours. You're awake, and you do firefighting. You have to move, stretchers and bodies. You have to stay awake the whole time. You have to go and deflood spaces. They fill with water, and you're in there, and you have to help, get everybody out. You have to move ammunition out of there, and they're screaming at you. They have actual brace for shock events they do, where the ship shakes and everything. You have to get down, hold onto the walls. It's really cool. I think Universal Studios built it. I might be mistaken there, but it's a multi-million-dollar facility. It's very cool. And then, at the end of that, they put your Navy ball cap on you, and you're done but you have about another week. But, then you're officially a sailor. So
Dang.
It was a good time.
Yeah,
I actually enjoyed it.
How'd you feel after that?
It's emotional. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is because you're awake for 24 hours, first of all. So I don't know if you've ever done that. It gets to your mind after a while, and you stand there and you've been through 2 months of this. Barely any sleep, not seeing your family. And I think when they come by and they put that Navy ball cap on you, it's like the biggest feeling of accomplishment you've ever. I've graduated high school at this point. That's about it. Did some sports and stuff, but there's no accomplishment like sitting there and like, wow, I'm in the Navy. It doesn't really hit you until they put that on you, and they're playing like the Star Spangled Banner and stuff. It was kind of cheesy, but no, it was exciting. The guy beside me was losing. He was crying. I was just standing there. I was like, all right, mostly excited to see my family.
Yeah. Sure.
There was an end. It's hard to see an end at boot camp.
Right. Did you try to stay in touch with your family during basic training?
Yeah, so I was the guy that got like 10 letters a day. And people learned to resent me for that in a joking way. But my mom is, she obviously loves me a lot, and she would write me 1 or 2 times a day. And she had all her friends writing me. I had my girlfriend at the time writing me, my sister writing me, my dad. Everybody was writing me letters. So it got to the point, honestly, at night I couldn't even read all my letters because we only had a little bit of time, and you wanted to get some sleep. So I think at the end I had like 20, 30 letters I hadn't even opened yet, which was at the time I was like, this is all right. But when I got done, I looked back and that was so helpful. Not even opening them, I didn't have to open them. It was just the thought that somebody was thinking and sending something, because you feel forgotten about. You can't just pick up. You think you get 2 phone calls in 2 months, so it's nice to know somebody out there actually cared, and they'll never know how much that helped.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any? I'm trying to think. In the Air Force, we call them TIs. But was there any like instructor or anything that?
Yeah. So we call
out?
them RDCs.
RDCs.
Recruit Division Commanders. They got the red ribbon around their uniform and wear what we call peanut butters, tan tops. So I had 3 assigned to my division, Division 952. So when I first got there, they said, hey, can you do push-ups? Can you run? I guess I looked decently in shape at the time. I don't know why they picked me, but I was like, yeah. And they're like, all right, come over here. And they put me in a different group. And this is before I had my division. And they're like, you're going to be in a 900 division, which is a special division. I had no idea what that meant. And I was like, is this like a Navy SEAL division? Because I don't want to do that. I'm not that tough. But what it meant was we were a flag division, so we marched with the flags. So we actually got to go to like 3 graduations at boot camp before we graduated. And I ended up holding the Maryland flag. And I actually was too tall to be a flag holder. But as people got hurt and moved on, I had to replace somebody. So there was a few females, and I was right in the middle of them, and it was by height. And I was about a foot taller than all of them, so I really stood out at boot camp. It was kind of embarrassing, honestly. But it was fun being in that division, though, because we spent like Saturdays practicing. There was a lot to it. Like, every little foot movement you make and hand gesture is like a big deal. It has to be perfect. Right. So we put a lot of work into that. It was amazing seeing what 80 people can do, simultaneously if you work hard enough for it. Right. And we had really good RDCs, the drill sergeants for that. So they were tough on us, but they had to work a lot with us, like, with learning how to do things correctly. So they actually kind of got more of a personal level with us than I saw other divisions where they were just kind of getting screamed at. So I liked it in the end, and we had to sacrifice a lot of like working out and running to go and do that, to train, with the flags. So it was just different. I think a lot of people had a different experience than I did because of that reason.
So get done with boot camp. What then do you go to training for your MOS at that point?
Well, I went to Olive Garden first, so.
You went to Olive Garden?
We went to Olive Garden as a family, I get the weekend. So no, my school was right across the street. So you leave boot camp, we got on a bus, we crossed the street, went to another gate, and I was at school. So we call it A school. So we went there, and I lived there until almost Christmas time. It was a little over 2 months. And at the time, I didn't know what like a rate was. I mean, I had a familiarity at this point. A rate is like an MOS, or your job, pretty much. So when I signed up, I did great on the ASVAB. A bunch of things were available for me, but there was no actual rates available at the time. So this is where it got kind of funny. My recruiter was like, well, you can just do this route, and it's called undesignated. And so you do this, and then you're going to show up, and you're going to kind of get to pick what you want to do on the ship. You're going to get to work with them, and then you can choose if that's what you want to do. And that's how it was described to me. So anybody in the Navy that may be listening will be like, no, that is not what you do. And I actually learned that in boot camp, because I kind of brought it up a couple times, and they just laughed at me. They're like, oh, have fun. And I'm like, well, this is the next 4 years of my life, so it's terrifying, because there's no way out of it. So my school really wasn't much. We learned how to like work with, the lines and mooring a ship. We actually learned how to clean. We learned how to paint, like proper painting techniques, and all my family thinks I'm doing something super cool, and I'm just up here learning how to paint, and I'm just like, oh, I'm doomed. I got 4 years of this. But luckily I was already in E3, so when I got out of there, I got out of that quick. But school was fun. It was more relaxed, You're so used to boot camp that even like the smallest freedoms are like the biggest deals. So like on the weekends, we didn't have to do anything. We had 2 days off. And to me, that was like the biggest deal of my life. I had 2 days. I could just like watch movies, hang out. We would go down to Chicago on a train. We had to wear our uniforms and walk around, but it was a good time. School was fun. It really was. I think it was a lot of fun because we had just been through 2 months of, really hard work.
Sure. So then what happened after that?
So after that, I took leave. finally got to go home. I got to spend the first Christmas at home. Just the way it worked out, it was perfect. You know, most people don't get that lucky. I got really lucky. So I took my first leave. I think I took 11 days, and then went down to Norfolk, Virginia. I got attached to the USS Abraham Lincoln, which is an aircraft carrier. It was originally stationed out of Everett, Washington. It was at sea, though, so it was already deployed. It was in Bahrain at the time, well, near Bahrain. So they put me on what they call beach debt. So again, all you do on beach debt is clean. I ended up, this is the first actual job I had in the Navy, we were drywalling. We were putting drywalling in one of the commanding officers' buildings on the Norfolk base down there. It's a huge Navy base. So I worked with 2 civilians, and there was like 3 of us. He would be like, show up at 9, show up at 10, I don't care. It was strange. So I'm in the military, it's like my first experience there, and I'm just like showing up whenever I want. We're drywalling. We're just like, oh, take Friday off. We're not working Fridays. We're done at like 3 o'clock every day. We're just going out to eat. I didn't have a car or anything down there, but I was like, this is awesome, you know, like, this is great. I did that for probably almost 2 months. I did this. And I mean, I watched like so many Netflix series. I'm just hanging out. It was nothing. And then one day they call us over, and there's about 80 people now on beach debt, and they're all assigned to my ship that I'm going to. And they say, hey, you guys are leaving tomorrow. And you know, we've become lazy, honestly. We're like, whoa, like we're not, you know, we're drywallers now. This is what we do. So we have to go get all our stuff. I have to call my mom and tell her, like, hey, I'm leaving tomorrow. And I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know where the ship was. I didn't even know how that worked. I mean, I had an idea of how long they'd been deployed. But again, I still don't have a rate. I didn't have a job or anything. So I'm like, this is going to be bad. This is not going to be fun. So put me on a plane, and we flew over to Italy. Jumped over to Spain, and then we went to Bahrain, which is a little island just east of Saudi Arabia. Landed there, and they put us on this old bus, about 80 of us at this point, and drove out to the ship. The ship was docked there, and they were in port, you know, like everybody was out, and they were enjoying their liberty time. They had about 3 days there before they went out to sea. So I get on the ship. I'm walking with my sea bag on. I got 2 bags, all my stuff. I have no idea. I've never been on an aircraft carrier. And if you've seen one in person, it's unbelievable the first time you see it. You walk up to it, and you know, 5,000 people living on there, over 100 aircraft. It's just loud. You don't know where anything is. Someone had to show me where my berthing was, and it was about 10:30, 11 at night local time. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. What is a berthing?
A berthing is a compartment where you sleep on the ship. So okay. It's about 3 racks or beds stacked on top of each other for each little section, and then you get a little curtain to shut, and that's all you got. And the rack lifts up, and you got everything you own right in there, and then you get a little foot locker too, and that's about it. So you really learn to be a minimalist. You don't have anything, and especially if you want to buy stuff overseas, you have to be able to learn to save room, because you can't bring anything back because you don't have the room for it. Mm-hmm. And because of fire hazards, you can't just leave stuff laying around, tripping hazards, things like that. So what you fit in your bed is what you have. I ended up having to throw away a bunch of civilian clothes I brought, because I knew we'd be hitting ports, so I had like a bunch of clothes to go out in, and I ended up having to just throw them in a trash bag and throw them out, because I couldn't fit like vital things we needed for, you know, to live on the ship.
Wow.
Yeah, so you learn really quick. That's something I think they should have trained you more for at boot camp. You learn to live out of your rack, but you don't bring anything there, so you don't have an option. But in normal life, people have, you know, belongings, and you really have to learn to just throw everything out. And this is for a year at a time. So that was hard. But anyway, it was 10 o'clock at night, and I get to the berthing where we live, and everybody had been out drinking.
Excuse me. Sorry.
Everybody had been out drinking. That's what they do in port. You've been out to sea 45 days, you know, they're legal age. They go out, they have some drinks, and they come back late at night. So I'm just walking there, nobody knows who I am, and everybody has a really close bond already, and I can see that right when I get there, but I don't know anybody. So they're kind of just ignoring me. I'm just the new little skinny kid, just push them aside. So ended up everybody was passing out everywhere, everyone was yelling, they all, you know, they looked like they were best friends, and I was just standing there, and I was just terrified. I was like, I do not want to be here right now, I just want to go home. Honestly, I was just like, this sucks. I couldn't find a drinking fountain. I remember I couldn't even swallow, I was so thirsty. And we were in the desert, we were just sitting there, it was probably 110 degrees. So, probably one of the worst nights of my life. I ended up sleeping on my sea bag on the deck in the berthing, just curled up. I think I put like a t-shirt over top of me as like a blanket, and maybe I got like an hour and a half of sleep. People were up yelling all night, it was horrible. And I get up in the morning and they say, hey, you have duty today. So everyone else left for the day, they're enjoying Bahrain, they're going out to the malls and stuff, and I had duty. And that just means that you can't leave. You people have to stay there. And they assigned me to some watches and stuff, and so it was a rough first day getting there for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how long were you guys at port there?
I think we were there for, usually it was a 3 or 4 day. I think I got there the second day, so maybe 2 more days. I think after my duty day, I got 2 more days to go out. So I got to go out and see Bahrain. I didn't really know anybody. I think I went out with people that I had arrived with because we kind of knew each other, just a familiar face was nice at this point because, you're in the Middle East, you don't know a single person.
Yeah. So. Wow. That's pretty intense. So ultimately, what ended up being your job on the aircraft carrier?
So at first, again, I didn't have a rate, so they put me in what's called deck department. So again, and this is something if you ask anybody in the Navy, they'll be like, whew, deck department. Like, they do a lot of the mooring to in and out of ports, which is cool. We do the unrep, which is underway replenishments. So we would hook up to another ship, a supply ship out to sea, and they would shoot over fuel for us. We'd hook up lines and they shoot over fuel. And then they'd also bring on cargo for us, like all the food and everything. And this was always at like 4:30 in the morning, high seas. It was really dangerous, very dangerous. And this is actually what happened to the Fitzgerald recently. It was an accident, I believe, involving some type of underway replenishment. So it's dangerous. About 3 months before this, I was living in my mom's attic, working at Menards, selling cabinets. And now I'm out there, I didn't know what I was doing because I didn't have much schooling because I didn't actually have a rate. So they don't really teach you anything. They're kind of just like, well, get out there and learn, which is kind of terrifying when you're in the middle of the ocean, and these guys know what they're doing and you don't. So you really, really have to learn to adapt. It was like, looking back, going in that way helped me more than going in any other way, I believe, because it really helped me learn to adapt quick. Because I was just thrown into it. Like, I was standing 6-8 hour watches right away in the middle of the night, and it was rough. Like, most of our days consisted of cleaning at first. Like, they would just give me a broom and they would have me sweep for like 3 or 4 straight hours and just push it around. Just listen, one headphone in, just pushed a broom around for days at a time. I was just like, this is never gonna end. What did I sign up for? But then you really start to get to know people, and like, I think because we were put in that tough situation in that department, it made a lot of us really close. We were definitely known as like the closest department on the ship. So like those guys, this was my first few months in the Navy, almost 7 years ago now, and they're still like some of my closest friends, on Facebook, Instagram, whatever. I'm always talking to them. And we'll always kind of have a close bond because of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So then, so you're on the ship, what was it called again? The
USS Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln. That's right.
CVN 72.
Wow. Yeah. So where else did you go on the Abraham? You said you're on there for a year total.
Yeah,
you're
close to a
deployed
year.
for
So
a year total.
we left Bahrain, and we would do about 45 days at a time.
Sorry.
We would do figure eights pretty much. We would just do circles out in the North Arabian Sea for about 45, 50 days at a time, which is a long time. It kind of goes by quick. You get in a routine. But we ended up going to Dubai. I've been to Dubai twice. We would go back to Bahrain. I don't know how many times I've been to Bahrain. We kept, those two were really close ports, and we were able to pull in there and enjoy those for like 3 or 4 days. We ended up leaving there. We went through the Suez Canal, which is very memorable. You got Egypt there, and you go through, and that takes about 24 hours to get through that. And then we went into the Med. When we got into the Med, we were able to go to Turkey, and I've been into Greece, and then that was it for that deployment. But we would go to these ports multiple times. We would just pull in, pull out, pull back in 45 days later. So, well over 95% of the deployment was out to sea.
Wow.
Smaller ships will pull in a lot more, but since I was on an aircraft carrier, it's harder. It's way more expensive to pull into port. Like in Turkey, we couldn't even pull into port. We had to sit out to sea and anchor, and an actual ferry boat from Turkey came and picked us up on the stern dock. So we would walk off the boat and then take a ferry into, Turkey. So it's a huge ship. It's 97,000 tons, so it's hard to just pull into a port.
Jeez.
Yeah, so it really limited us. But we didn't need to pull in as much because of our size and what we had on board. I think we had 9 gyms alone on board. So smaller ships, submarines, they really need to pull in. They really need to resupply. They'll be hurting. Sometimes they'll be swapping racks, sharing the same bed. They call it hot racking. They'll get out, and then the next guy will get into sleep. So we were blessed we didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
So we couldn't complain too much, but it wasn't easy.
Jeez. All right, so how long did it take for you to get comfortable being on the USS Abraham Lincoln, like find your way and move around?
To get comfortable, I don't even know if I ever got comfortable because it's so big, and you do something every day with something new. I mean, we would have threats coming in, especially in like the Straits of Hormuz and stuff. It got a little scary sometimes.
What do you mean by threats?
So in the Straits of Hormuz, a lot of oil comes through there. Over like 90% of the world's oil is pushed through there. So one of our main missions is to really just make a presence there to make sure that that strait is open so the oil can keep coming through, which, saves us on gas prices here. So people working all around the world for that. But at the time, Iran had a small island there in the Strait of Hormuz, and they would send out small boats, armed. They would come, small speedboats, maybe 15, 20 feet long, small boats. We're on a huge aircraft carrier. And they would come flying at us, which I don't know if you ever heard of the USS Cole. It's a small, I believe it was a destroyer in Yemen. Small speedboat came up beside this, huge destroyer and blew a hole in it, killing a ton of sailors and taking the ship out of commission. They had to, pull the ship back to Norfolk, Virginia.
Do you remember that?
So yeah, we can't take it as lightly, and they're doing this all day. And we had guns armed. We had helicopters shooting flares at them. I would be on a watch on the 50 caliber, just standing there, and they'd come flying at us, flying different directions, and it was stressful. We couldn't ever relieve our watches. You had to stay on until the threats were gone. So I remember it was just 10, 15 hours at a time, just standing there. And it's not cool out there. It's 120 degrees sometimes out there in the ocean. The sun, we didn't see a cloud for 8 months probably.
Jeez. Are your rules of engagement still the same out there? Like you can't fire?
Yeah, so it's by, they really do it by yards there. So there's like a danger zone and a threat zone and stuff we have, which is certain yardage from the ship. We really weren't trying to, I think this was coming from higher up from the Pentagon, we weren't trying to fire at them because they weren't firing at us. Mm-hmm. They were just coming at us and then turning. And I think a big part of that is they wanted us to fire at them. They wanted us to start something, because then boom, CNN, we're firing at these small boats out here, and then they claim to be civilians, and their main purpose is to make us look bad, honestly, because they know they're not going to be able to do anything. We had guided missile cruiser with us, the Cape St. George, I believe it was, a submarine with us. We had helicopter support. We had F-18 Super Hornets fully loaded out, an ungodly amount, able to launch at any time, and they're flying around. So they weren't causing a serious threat, but we had to take it very seriously because, again, one small, boat loaded with TNT can do a lot of damage to a ship. So it was stressful when we went through those straits, and we would stay there because we had to make sure that they remained open for cargo ships to get through there.
Wow. That's got to be intense.
It was.
So how many deployments did you go on?
Just this one.
Just the one?
But it was a full year. It was a long haul.
Sure. Man. So you get done with your deployment, and then do you go back to Virginia? Or?
We go back to Virginia. Usually you would go back for a few months, but the USS Abraham Lincoln had been commissioned for nearly 25 years at this point. So an aircraft carrier is run by nuclear power. It has a life expectancy of 50 years it can run. 25 years into that, they have to rehaul it. So they go in and they actually take the pistons out and they refuel everything and then put them back in. This takes about 5 years. They call it RCOH. We did it in Newport News, Virginia. So we went back to Norfolk and then we ended up going to Newport News, which is just across the bay. You can see it. And dry docking our ship. So we completely flooded out the basin we sat in, and then they drained it. So our ship isn't even in the water. It's an amazing thing to see an aircraft carrier sitting out of the water. It's massive. You could go up and walk under it. So that's where I remained for the remaining of my entire Navy career, was sitting in the shipyard. They call it a career killer, and I could definitely see why after a while. They, towards the end of deployment, I was working as what they call an operations specialist. I eventually struck out of the deck department where the hard work was, and I ended up working on computers and radars. It was a lot of fun. Not as much camaraderie, so it wasn't as enjoyable, personable, but like it was cooler stuff that you can go on and say you did. Plotting charts and looking at enemy territory and deciding what to blow up and things like that. It's kind of cool learning all that, but we get back to Newport News, and everything just stops. All that excitement, it just stops, and now you're a shipyard worker. You're a Navy shipyard worker, and it's mostly civilians. It's not a fun place to work. It's loud. You have to wear double hearing protection. You have to wear a hard hat. You don't even get to wear like your normal uniform. You just look like a civilian almost. It's long days, and again, like I was working on radars, you can't do that in port. So what do? You get assigned what they call TAD, a temporary duty. They put me in security. So went down to a little bit of like training combat school in North Carolina. I did some cool stuff, ran around with guns, got to shoot, learn how to do all that. And then go back, and then you learn, you just stand watches for 12 straight hours. It's really just standing there with a M16, checking IDs for day after day. Ended up being about 15-hour days doing that down in Virginia for almost 2 years, the remainder of my time. I did some other things later on, but
wow.
Yeah.
Man. So talk to me a little bit more about the job where you're doing radars.
Okay, so
what exactly was that?
That's called so the rate's called an operations specialist, or an OS, as it was. Our names are our rates in the Navy, so I was OS. I ended up being OS2, which is an E5, so people call me OS2. What I did specifically was work with the what we call the NIXI. It's a Slick 25. It's an anti-submarine warfare, so it trails behind the ship. And what the NIXI does pretty much is sends out acoustic and magnetic signals, and we drop it in high pressure times. So in the Straits of Hormuz and stuff, we drop it. And if a torpedo is shot at our ship, which could do extreme damage to an aircraft carrier, take it out. Torpedoes nowadays, they can do a lot of damage. Torpedoes will track and hit the ship, because it's picking up all the metal on there. So it'll hit right in the center of the ship. So what the NIXI does is twice as long as the ship. So you can imagine how long this wire is we're running. It shoots out these signals, so the torpedo thinks that that's the ship. So, and the torpedo will automatically set itself to the middle of the ship. So now the middle of the ship is actually about 250 yards behind the ship because of this, this radar thing. So these torpedoes will miss the ship from behind. So, I mean, we never actually had to use it, to dodge a torpedo. Nobody ever shot at us like that. But we would have to, do training, keep up with it, be able to drop it at a minute's notice. Especially in the Straits of Hormuz, we would always have it out there because there's constant threats. So just in case.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
That. Yeah.
Hope that wasn't too top secret information. Try to keep it pretty basic.
Yeah. No, but that's really cool.
Yeah.
All right. So after 2 years of doing MP or guard duty, type stuff, you get out in the Navy?
Well, first they sent me somewhere else. So this is where my big finale was in the Navy. This is why sometimes I just, I'd barely even talk about it because it really was just really anticlimactic with that deployment, over there, launching planes all day was awesome, and then I ended up in the shipyards. So after the standing guard duty, they put me on a ladder team. So my job every day was to come into work, and there's hundreds, probably over 1,000 ladder wells on the ship, and they're real steep on an aircraft carrier. And there's treads that you use, obviously, to walk up, and there's what we call non-skid on them so you don't slip. But they were all really smooth at this point because people have been walking on them for 25 years. So we went in and measured them all out, and we would take out these treads and we'd put new ones in. We'd have to drill them, we'd have to make them. A lot of times I worked at a warehouse, so I wouldn't even go to the ship. I would go to the warehouse and make these treads. And then, the next week we'd bring them on, and so I was just doing construction work. I didn't even feel like I was in the military, honestly. When we went to the warehouse, sometimes I'd just wear normal civilian clothes. It didn't feel like the military. I already felt like I was out. So I think that made the transition a lot easier getting out.
Yeah. What year was it that you got out?
2015, September.
Okay.
Yeah.
September 2015. And so once you got out, what did you do at that point?
So when I got out, kind of funny, the first thing I did when I got out of the Navy was go on a cruise. Got right on their ship, so we went down to the Caribbean, and I just needed some time, I think, after that. There was a lot of stress. I'd saved plenty of money. I never lived beyond my means in the Navy. And I mean, 12-month deployment, you can save a decent amount of money when you're spending $3 a week on Red Bull. So went on a cruise, and then I moved to Dayton here. I moved to Beaver Creek. I wanted to go to the main campus. I had went to the lake campus, like I said before. So all my credits were still here, not much changed. I switched over to education at the time. I'm no longer doing that, but I had about 3 months of nothing. So I moved here, and I couldn't start school until January because I'd missed the fall semester by about 2 months. So didn't know anybody. I really just had to learn to adapt. I started coming here and hanging out at the Veterans Center we have. Got to know some people, and eventually luckily got a job there. But that helped a lot. But it was a lot easier to adapt for me than I think for a lot of people. I kept busy. I just, would go to the gym every day. I would, work on my future school stuff I knew I had to do. I started studying things I knew I would be studying, and, just doing everything I could to not just get lazy. Because 3 months of nothing, you can get lazy really quick. I'd sleep in some days till 11. And I'm like, I can't do this. I'm not going to become that. So, yeah, I really had to just prepare for school at this point. That's about all I did.
Wow. Yeah. All right, so now that you're out and everything, going to school, what's your major?
Communications.
Communications, yeah. And this relates back to, is there some similarity between communications and what you did with the radar?
No,
thing?
not really. So with communications here, I'm going more leaning towards like working in sales or marketing.
Okay.
So not really like communication systems on board. I kind of worked with those, but
yeah,
completely different. This is more civilian side here. Not as exciting.
Now that you're out though, you've adapted to kind of the veteran community here at Wright State. Have you reached out to other veteran communities outside of Wright State? Are you part of any organizations or anything?
The only ones, honestly, that I've reached out to is my friends that have gotten out and started going to school. So I've asked them, what kind of veteran services they have, talked to them about that. I've actually tried to convince people to come here because of our center. It's amazing, and anybody that goes here can tell you that. But no, I've talked to people from Ohio University. They've come and visited our office and exchanged information on what we do and what I do for the VMC. But other than that, no, really I just stick close to my friends that were in the military and try to guide them, learn from my mistakes getting out or what I did that was beneficial to me. And it's not an easy switch, but you can make it easy if you work hard.
Sure, yeah. What about your family? How do they feel about how do they feel now about your career in the Navy?
They were always very supporting of it. I never had anybody that doubted anything I could do. My mom was very scared, and she sent me packages every day on my deployment. She would send mail all the time and stuff. She's always been very supportive, and I'm appreciative of that. But no, I think they're proud because I was able to, get out, move on directly to school. I'm almost done. I think I have 14 credits left, and I can get out of here. I kind of left the military behind me. I took it as a stepping stone for sure. I think I also looked up to my grandpa a lot, and that's kind of why I joined. He did that. He used his GI Bill. He got his degree. I'm big against debt, so every step I could take to avoid that, I did.
That's awesome. Now, just kind of wrapping things up here. I just have a couple more questions for you. Just reflection type questions. So, how do you feel, the military, your experience in the military, how do you feel that's kind of affected your life?
It's helped me adapt. So I had, never left home. I was even going to college and I still never left home. I had to adapt to a broken family growing up and things like that, but really helped me to adapt to really hard situations that you can never really be ready for. You can never know what's going to happen the next day. But being thrown out there and working in that deck department at first, and then going and working these security 15-hour days in the sun, and it never was really that fun at the time. But when I got out, it was one of those things you look back, kind of like high school. You're like, oh, that was some of the best times of my life, actually. And some of the best people I've ever met. And it's really helped me to adapt, I think, to school a lot. I'm that veteran that's always the first one in the classroom. I've maintained a 4.0 for 3 semesters now. I do work hard, and I think part of that was because my mom was tough on me growing up, you know, working around the house and making sure I was always doing something. And then part of that from the military, you know, like always be on time. That's all you got to do. Show up, look good, be on time. That's all you got to do in the military for anyone that's thinking about it. But no, I feel like I can adapt to anything now. Like I feel like you could throw me a situation and I could adapt to it.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's real good. I think honestly better than a lot of veterans that go to school.
Yeah, and another thing that I'm big on, and people might hate me for it, but I do not like when people use the military as an excuse to get lazy, as an excuse to drop out of school. Yeah. You know, I know people went through harder things than I did even, you know, and I respect that, and I honor that. But I don't think the military makes weak people. I don't think that's true. And I think a lot of people sometimes fall back on that, and they can use it as an excuse. And to me, that's not okay. To me, you know, you join for a higher reason, you know, and they make sailors, they make soldiers, they make Marines, they make airmen, you know, they don't make weak people. And I don't think, I think people sometimes let that go when they get out, and they, you know, they feel that they're almost privileged because they did that, or they're entitled to more respect than they deserve. So I don't want it to sound mean, but I just think people need to sometimes, you know, stay on their path, you know, keep going with it. You know, you can't let that drag you down. You have to be able to let it go. I understand it's really hard to adapt. It's really hard sitting in a classroom with people that have never served. You know, they'll never understand you. They'll never, you know, the only people that understand you is other veterans like me and you, which is something there. And it's hard to explain what it is, but I don't think you can use the military as an excuse to get lazy when you get out.
Right. Really good. That's really good. So your time in the military, and your experience, again, how does that make you feel about current situations going on in the government or in the military?
I have a lot of faith in our military for sure now. We all made mistakes over there. You know, we would all get complacent. We would, you know, nobody's perfect. It's just, you know, human beings working on the ships and serving overseas. Everyone makes mistakes. But the mistakes looking back that we made were so minor. We were so trained, everybody was, you know, and it really made me proud of our military, you know, seeing what they can do. You know, at the time, I always felt like we were messing up. I always felt like we were doing something wrong. But I think that's kind of how they make you want to think, so you always want to do better yourself. So yeah, we got a lot of good men and women over there right now, and I have faith in our country for sure.
That's good. Last question. If you had to sum up your story for just something to reflect or something to pass on to future generations, how would you do that? What would you say to those that would be listening?
I kind of think of my younger siblings here. You know, some of them, if you don't know what you want to do and you've always had that urge to do something bigger than yourself, it's for sure something you should definitely consider. I understand some people, physical, mental reasons, they cannot join. But for me, it was like the biggest stepping stone I ever could have had in my life. For me, it really just sprung me forward. You know, I feel like I'm flying through school now. I can really get going rather than just coming out in debt, you know, not knowing what you want to do. So I think it's a great experience. I hope my little brothers do it, honestly, if they don't figure out what, you know, exactly what they want to do. Obviously, I hope they stay safe. You know, there's a risk to everything, but it's something you'll never regret.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Nate, thank you for your story, man, and
Yep.
Thank you for your service.
Well, thank you for your service. You're good.